حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Saturday edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. As always, great to be with you, and as always too, we have some amazing guests on the show. We'll be talking to two psychologists, but obviously separately. We're going to be looking at over-the-counter drugs by minors or youngsters, and this time in the first part of the show we'll be looking at autism from a slightly different perspective. I do know that Health Matters covered autism a little while ago, but we're going to be looking at autism from a schooling perspective. And in studio with me is Ashika Govender. She is a remedial therapist, and Claudine Adar. She is an educational psychologist talking about autism and autism in schools. Good morning, ladies. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Lovely to have you here, and very especially since we know that Autism Awareness Day has just passed by a couple of weeks ago, I should imagine. You guys play a pivotal role in the lives of families who have children that suffer from autism. So let's start with you, Ashika. You are a remedial teacher. Why have you decided to go this route? Because I should imagine it's very challenging.
Julie, I've been teaching in mainstream for many years, and you find that in the classroom, in the mainstream class, there are children that really struggle. And as a teacher, if you're not trained properly, you feel a bit helpless to give the children the help they need. So I furthered my studies. I did the inclusion course adverts, and then eventually found that I got a position at Randburg Clinic School, and I find that it's like a calling for me. It's very fulfilling. Yes.
First time I'm hearing about Randburg Clinic School. Tell us a little bit more about the school.
Randburg Clinic School is a school that has children with severe behavior disorder and autism as well. But within the past 5 years, our autism unit has grown, like tripled, I think. We've got.
Why do you think that is the case?
The need is huge out there. It really is. Parents really struggle, especially if their child is not properly diagnosed. You find that the child goes from school to school and there's no good fit for the child.
And frustration for the parents.
Absolutely. There's a lot of frustration on the part of the parents and the child as well. Yes.
Claudine, you are an education psychologist, and you too decided to join this school. What is it about working with children with autism that spoke to you? And you feel that you are able to make a difference, because no doubt it is very challenging. Autism is a condition on a spectrum, and no two children suffering from autism are alike, would ever be alike for that matter.
So just as you've said, because the children are so different, the capacity to learn from them is so amazing. I mean, we always think of it like we're going to work to impart knowledge or to help them. But there's so often that we find that we're learning from them, especially, in psychology. The advances that you could make being on the ground with the learners, learning from them, finding out, the differences, the subtle differences that is in autism, it's mind-blowing. It really is.
Ashika, as a teacher, many years in regular and now in remedial schooling, what are the challenges that you find working with children with autism? Do you kind of go home certain days being absolutely exhausted and feel that you've not made a difference, and then certain days go home and feel so good about yourself because you kind of got through to that particular child?
Yes, Julie, it's totally different in a special needs school, at a school like ours. In a mainstream school, we know the teacher-learner ratio is quite huge, like 40 and even more, 50 to 1. Whereas in a special needs school, the learners, the classes are much smaller.
Wow.
Like in our autism unit, we don't go more than 8 learners with a class assistant. But I promise you, if you have a passion for special needs and you have the compassion, there isn't a day where you don't find you've made a difference to some child in the school. So it is a very fulfilling.
I must say it's very, very heartening to hear that the class numbers are so small, 8 per unit. But even that, I should imagine, is challenging simply because the children are so different. Their needs are so very, very different. How do you cope with that? Because I should imagine you may have a child with autism who is emotionally disconnected, and then you have a child throughout the session or throughout the day displays repetitive behaviors, and it's very distracting for the other children in the class. How do you settle them down?
So we work on an individual education plan for each of the learners. So most of the time the interaction is one-on-one, except for when we're doing social learning. So because of the social aspect of autism, the learners do need to have that form of interaction, but most of the time they are in their own little bubble. So
8 in a class in their own little world.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's not as distracting as you would think for the learner that is demonstrating his repetitive behavior, because the others aren't really bothered by it most of the time. We do though manage. So we wouldn't necessarily put a child that is sensitive with a child that claps very loudly in the same class, because then we know that there wouldn't be a goodness of it in that class, and we would just be making the teacher's life a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely. Just for the benefit, I did indicate that Health Matters on ITV covered Autism World Awareness Day. For the benefit of the viewers tuned in now, what is autism?
So autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means that the brain develops differently to the brain of what we would call neurotypical person. So we try to just stay away from like normal brains, but it would be the neurotypical brain. Whereas we are a lot more prone to language and to verbal communication. Autistic children or children with autism are a lot more inclined to visual material. So they learn visually, they understand pictures more than they would understand words. So the environment needs to be tuned to a more visually preemptive setting. They also prefer structure and they need routine as well. But in order to diagnose autism, we look at social communication and repetitive behaviors. Yeah.
And obviously the parents have to be in the loop, because everything they learn in the classroom has to be repeated in the home setting as well. Otherwise all of that work will be lost. In terms of the different spectrum that we're talking about and all the different types of behaviors by children with autism, I'm really heartened to hear that you have this amazing school, Randburg Clinic School, and I should imagine it caters for the children up to possibly grade 12. What happens to them after they're done with school? What does the future look like for them? How do you prepare each and every individual child to go out into the world? And what does the tertiary space look like? Is there space for them in the tertiary environment?
At our school, we have children from moderate to high support needs. And because our unit is fairly young, just 5 years, we are growing with the needs of the learners.
The autism unit is 5 years old, but the actual school has been around for
many, many years,
okay.
like over close to 30 years, I would say, yes. So we have just started a skills center where we find that our high need support learners that are up to 18 years, they need to be taught like skills, whether it's sorting and packing. Hopefully then we plan to network with maybe protected work environments where they can eventually do basic simple tasks so that they have routine when they leave us. So.
You talk of low and high need individuals. That suggests to me that those with low needs could possibly go out into the world and make a life for themselves in a very normal environment. Would I be correct in thinking that?
So on Autism Awareness Day, which was the 2nd of April, we actually had a breakfast with the MEC. And they announced there that they would be trying to communicate with higher education to see for spaces for accommodation within the tertiary sphere for autistic learners. So yes, the ones with low support they can go through mainstream, they can go through university, they can become engineers or doctors, or some of us have seen those television programs where there's a doctor or a surgeon or whatever and he has autism. So yes, the possibilities are endless for the low support, even for some of the medium to moderate support as well. They could go out
and they could go out and marry and raise families of their own.
Yes, quite successfully.
Okay, we're going to go for an ad break now, and I'm going to let you go off, Ashika, because Wanele from Gauteng Cricket Board is going to join us and talk about this amazing partnership with the school and just putting autism out in the public space. So don't you go away. We're talking autism, we're talking about partnerships with organizations like this amazing school, Randburg Clinic School, and sporting bodies. Do they make a difference? And should more sporting bodies come on board, not only with autism, but with any other disability? Stay with us. Welcome back, and we are now joined by Wanele Mngomezulu. He is the Marketing, Communications and PR Manager at Lions Gauteng Cricket Board. And the reason we have him here is he has formed a partnership with the school, Randburg Clinic School, to raise awareness of this condition called autism. Wanele, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much for welcoming us. And it is an honor to be here.
Lovely to have you guys here. You're talking and raising a very important issue, and that is autism. Yep. We've just celebrated the Awareness Day a little while ago. Obviously something close to your heart.
Sure.
And you've put your weight behind it. I think at Gauteng Cricket, you guys have raised the necessary awareness. What is the response like?
Sure. I think firstly, again, before I start, let me just thank you guys for the opportunity to just share the message of why we embarked on this project. And as CGL, which is Central Gauteng Lions, which has a 51% shareholding on the Bezhap Highveld Lions cricket team. So through the cricket team, so both the union, which is CGL, and Bezhap Highveld Lions, we've then resolved to adopt autism as our CSI project.
Wonderful.
For the entire season. So it's not only a month campaign, but it's something that we've put our support for throughout the entire year, going forward into next year as well.
How have the players and the public responded to this initiative?
So it's something that we've started this month as well. So knowing the proposal landed to our desk about a month ago, looked at it, and we've looked at what we've been supporting. So as CGL, we are part of the CSA, which supports Pink Day. So from a Cricket South Africa, Pink Day is their property that raises breast cancer awareness and that. And then from a franchise perspective, so separating the two, we then said we also need to have a cause that we put our weight and support behind it. Autism then landed into our desk, but we were looking for a charity that's around education and kids that we can support in that way. The team itself have embraced it, so the entire squad, the entire 21-man team, including the Bezhap Highveld Lions management, we're fully behind. The guys, we visited the clinic last week Friday. It was just how do we describe it? A fun day. Yeah.
Right.
So definitely not a tear. I wish I shed a tear, but it was definitely a fun day. And that exercise was really trying to understand what autism is all about and how can we assist from CGL as well as Lions to get behind from an awareness perspective, but obviously the biggest thing being raising finance towards all the needs that they need.
So you will be then, all the finances that you raise will go directly to the school and help lots of children and families with autism.
Yes.
What
So-
are the kind of initiatives you're looking at, in terms of fundraisers for the rest of the season?
Sure. So I'll come back to the fundraising. From an awareness perspective, we've resolved to put our support through for our CSA T20 game challenge that started on the 5th of April all the way to 5th of May. So as a team, we've resolved to wear these colorful ribbons. So the entire management, staff and team. And then from a team perspective, we've got armbands. So if you see any of our games throughout the CSA tournament, the guys will be wearing autism. And obviously from a visual perspective, the intention is to bring it up, raise awareness to say, yes, what is autism? And then we're hoping that it will spark just the interest of saying, let's research, and people to lend their hand as well in assisting in that. From a fundraising perspective, there's various initiatives that we've planned in there. This started last week, Tuesday, on the 2nd of April, where we hosted our Lions annual golf day. And that golf day was really a launch pad for our CSA 20 challenge as well as the autism campaign, which was the International World Day of Autism and that. So the proceeds that we generated on that day were literally handed over to the school in that. Wow. And we're looking to do more. There's more auctions that we've planned along the line. On the 23rd of May as well, there's a fundraising dinner that we're busy working on. And then there's Mandela Day, 67 minutes, which we've just heard that there's a cricketer at the school. Apparently apparently loves his cricket, knows all the players, knows all the scores and that.
Oh, wow.
So for us, it's not just being supportive, but also unearthing talent.
Well, we need to have him here in studio one of the days as well. How was this partnership formed? Did you ever think that this would become a possibility or a reality for you guys? Because it's huge having them behind you.
Not at all, not at all. From our side, we will chase down any lead, any avenue to raise awareness, to get funding. So we've just literally been shooting in the dark, just hoping to get anything done. We have an amazing team at the school that is searching. So from the parents to the staff members, everyone is behind awareness and, just trying to get the word out there, the school's name or autism in general. So,
and you couldn't go bigger than this, could you?
No, we couldn't have asked for more.
Wanele?
I'm speaking to a few sponsors as well, some of our sponsors, to get behind the cause. And so in the near future, we will be announcing what the sponsors are prepared to offer as part of this campaign and initiative as well. And as I said, it's very close to our hearts, not just myself, but the entire team, the board. We're all behind this campaign. And so when we landed on our desk, we literally just adopted it and moved. It happened within weeks, probably less than 2 weeks, and we just said, this is it, let's run with it. And the guys were saying we accepted with the relationship.
As a lay person, what has or what is your understanding of autism?
I think when we attended the clinic with the school last week Friday, our perception was we are different. Now it's understanding why people living with autism are actually slightly different than us. But when Ronald, the principal, explained that it is all about the spectrum, we operate in different spectrum and that. Then from our society's norms, we then find ourselves being grouped in these clusters because of our spectrum and that. So here's a group of citizens that belong to South Africa, and as the Constitution says, South Africa belongs who lives in it. And we cannot classify them, we cannot treat them differently. And just understanding how to appreciate what they go through and what is it that we can assist in understanding their world in that way. So it's those level of spectrum where we're now saying, let's understand their spectrum, because we as individuals, we think we're normal, but they also normal in that space. So we're now merging the two worlds to say, let's embrace each other and understanding in our different worlds in that.
And sadly, I want you both to respond, from your own experience. When people try to understand the world of a person suffering from autism, what did you think? What was it all about?
Sure.
People don't often apply their minds. As long as they don't see it, it's never top of mind. Sure. But unless you've been exposed to this, for any disability for that matter, unless you're exposed to it firsthand, do you then take an interest and you then try to understand what their world is all about? So what was your understanding?
From our understanding is, here's a society that's misunderstood and then treated differently in terms of the economic benefits, the societal
and also painted with the same brush. They're
same
so
brush.
Different.
Exactly, to what we call us. It becomes an us and them, and it's really not an us and them. We're one. It's just a matter of going into making the effort to understanding their world and how it operates and how we can then try and form this unity and that. And I love this logo where it's just the puzzles of colors that flourishes, that says we as South Africans are one, the rainbow nation that's trying to get along and saying, let's embrace each other in our diversity, in our differences, and then come together as one to say, we're here to support you in that way.
Brilliant initiative, keep it up, and I commend you for making the suggestion. Prior to you joining the school, Randburg Clinic School, were you ever interested in autism? And I know you studied psychology. As a psychologist, you must have come across it in your studies, but did you think that this was the path you're going to walk down?
No. I knew that I wanted to make a difference, but I wasn't 100% sure until I met Randburg Clinic School. I wasn't sure. In fact, I didn't even want to be in a school because I thought to myself, what is the way to make the most impact as a psychologist? And I thought, well, clearly then I need to have a private practice somewhere where I can reach the most people. Or like a mobile something where I'm up and about. But I've actually found that the school has everything that I thought I'd need,
And sorry to rush you, we've got a half minute to wrap up. Has your interaction with the school and with Wanele changed your perspective on people with autism?
Yes, 100%. Hollywood paints a picture of brilliant autism, and when you see them, then it's so easy to think that they don't understand you or they don't know what's going on around them. But when you interact with them, like Wanele was saying, when you try and get into their world, you see that they are so amazing.
They're as human as you and I.
Yes.
What do you think about your collaboration with Gauteng Cricket?
I think it's amazing. I think we can learn from them and they can learn from us, and learning is amazing.
The first interaction, the golf day, did it meet your expectations?
Yes, it did.
And beyond.
And beyond, and beyond. The last week Friday, actually, when they came out to the school, when they got to interact with the learners, I think it was so beautiful to see them learning, learning to play instruments or learning to just interact and take pictures and to get down on their level, to speak to it brought out the human side to the superstars,
Final words from you, Wanele.
I think, our leaf is from the Constitution to say we all have to embrace each other in our diversity and that's where we started with this relationship and that. So we're not only focusing on breast cancer, but there's a lot of opportunities that we're looking at.
Breast cancer and autism is just a label. When you look behind the label, it's actual real people like you and I with feelings and the same needs and wants as you and I.
And sport being used as a social change.
The great equalizer.
Yes, as Matiba said.
That's where we leave it. Wonderful having you guys in studio. Continue doing what you're doing. It is Amazing. And there you have it, Gauteng Cricket, or Lions Gauteng Cricket, partnered with the Randburg Clinic School. It is the Lions Gauteng Cricket social awareness, or the CSI initiative, and Wanele has just told us it's going to continue the entire season, possibly even into next year, and may that relationship grow from strength to strength and make a huge difference in the lives of people with autism. Welcome back. I did say at the beginning of the show that we have two psychologists in studio. Well, the second one is Jenny Wanting. She's from an organization called DARE, Drug Assessment, Rehabilitation and Education, and she's here to talk to us about something very troubling that's going down in the communities. It's over-the-counter drugs that young children are indulging in. Jenny, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
Worrying, isn't it? Apart from the fact that children are possibly hooked onto hard drugs, and that in itself is a challenge, we're now seeing children experimenting with over-the-counter drugs and fizzy drinks. How big a problem has that become?
Okay, so the concoction that they're creating is something called lean, and it is lean, yes. So it's normally a codeine-based cough mixture that is mixed with a cold drink. Obviously, the cold drink makes it taste better, makes it taste sweet, makes it much easier to stomach. And the reason they're abusing it is because codeine is a mind and mood altering substance. So it gives them an effect, it gives them a feeling. It makes them feel very dizzy, very lightheaded. They're out of it. They're on a high.
What happens when they come off that high? What's their mood like? And does it mean that they've got to be on this perpetual high and they just keep on using?
Okay, so codeine is psychologically and physically addictive. So in the beginning, it's more of the psychological addiction. They get addicted to that spaced out feeling where nothing matters, they don't think, they don't feel. They get addicted to that first. But with prolonged use, codeine then becomes physically addictive. Codeine is an opiate. It belongs to the same family of drugs as heroin does. So physically then it can become addictive as well. And if they don't get it, they would then start to experience physical withdrawal symptoms. So nausea, muscle cramping, vomiting. And the only thing that makes those withdrawal symptoms go away is for them to use it again.
Sure. This trend has just kind of started up over the past few years. As a matter of fact, very sadly, last year we'd heard about a young Muslim boy on the West Rand that had actually died from this concoction. I think he was about 18 years old. And I don't think anyone in the family were even aware of the fact that this is what he was taking. So it is that dangerous, is it not? It's deathly.
It is very, very serious because codeine suppresses breathing. So if a person takes too much, if they overdose, it can suppress breathing, they will stop breathing and they die. And the concern is it's very easy for people to access these things, especially for kids. So whether they steal the cough mixture from the medicine cabinet or home, or whether they get it from a pharmacist, or whether they buy it on the black market, buy it illegally, they are able to access it. And often they think that it's safer than illegal drugs because it's a medicine. So they think, it doesn't have the same negative effects that an illegal drug would have, so we can mess around with this, we can play with this. And of course they're wrong.
It's lethal.
It's very, very
and
dangerous.
Addictive.
Highly addictive, physically and psychologically.
What does the future look like for someone that takes the codeine with soft drinks? Let's look 5 years hence or even 2 years hence. Are they going to go on to even harder drugs?
Well, that is the nature of
because
addiction.
They're chasing a high all the time.
That is the nature of addiction. So your body starts to develop tolerance. You get used to the effect. You get used to the feeling. You need to use more and more and more to get that effect that you're looking for. And then you also start to get bored with that feeling. So you start looking for other things. And in our country, we have a very serious problem with a drug called nyope, which is dagga mixed with heroin. Heroin also belongs to that opiate family. So we'll see people moving on to young kids, moving from messing around playing with things like lean onto smoking dagga, and then dagga mixed with heroin.
Frightening indeed. You're an educational psychologist and you the founding member of DARE, Drug Assessment, Rehabilitation and Education. You're based in Rosebank, Johannesburg. Tell us about this NPO that you're running, and just the need for such organizations throughout the country.
Okay. So I'm very passionate about the work that we do at DARE. There's two arms to DARE. One, we do the educational programs in schools, talks around prevention, giving kids the real facts about substance abuse, making them aware of all the different drugs that come onto the market, the new trends, and what the dangers are involved with that. Also helping them to understand addiction, that addicts are not losers and dropouts, they don't come from bad schools, they don't come from bad families. Anybody can become an addict if they start experimenting with a substance. We also then do drug testing in schools. The reason for that, we want to catch them in the early stages, before it becomes too serious a problem, before they mess up their education, before they mess up their lives, before they kill themselves. And working in the school environment means that we can get the treatment center, the parents, and the school all working together as a team to look after these kids and to help get them off drugs. So we do the education, we do the testing, and then we also run an outpatient counselling centre where we work with children and we work with adults. We get a lot of referrals from the schools that we work with. We also get a lot of referrals from doctors, from pharmacists, and even individuals referring themselves for treatment. And outpatient treatment is useful because not everybody can take time away from school or from work to go and do a rehab program. Also cost-wise, outpatient treatment is less expensive than inpatient treatment.
People often seem to think that if you want to get off the hard drugs, the best way to do it is to get into a facility for 21 days or longer, and that is going to kind of fix you. And here you're talking about outpatients. How successful is that? And for how long would the person have to keep coming back on a regular basis for them to be able to overcome the addiction?
Okay, so inpatient treatment definitely does have its place for people who are addicted to physically addictive drugs, who are going to go through withdrawal. To do a detox or to do an inpatient a stay is recommended because those withdrawal symptoms can be life-threatening, and also they trigger a relapse. You know, the person doesn't want to go through the pain of withdrawal. So for someone who's already done a detox and wants to do outpatient treatment, or for someone who is in the early stages of addiction, or for someone who is very, very motivated to rehabilitate, outpatient treatment is very effective. And the duration of the treatment really depends on the individual. We tailor the treatment program to that person. So they will do their individual counseling sessions. We also introduce them to Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and the 12-step program so that they can get support in that way as well. And outpatient treatment it's really about teaching the person how to live without the drugs. So whereas inpatient treatment, once they've finished their program, they still have to go home and learn how to function in that home and work environment and school environment without the drugs. With outpatient treatment, as they are going along, they are already learning to manage without the drugs. The going home can be dangerous.
It sounds very bleak. I'm just wondering about people watching us this morning who have a loved one who's probably addicted and they wanting the help, or they wanting to help their loved one. What would be the first step, you know, the first step in the right direction?
Okay. First step is not to ignore the problem. I think that there's a lot less stigma attached to substance abuse and to addiction than there was before. There is a lot of help available. So first, not to ignore the problem. Even as a family member, you know, talking to someone in the addiction is difficult because they're in denial, they don't want to hear about it, they don't want to stop. And so as a family, maybe first to seek help for yourself, to find a way, someone to assist you with talking to the addict.
How important is that?
Very important. We call it motivational interviewing. We call it, constructive confrontation, helping the addict to admit that they have a problem and to be willing to go for treatment. Very, very important first step. And if they're motivated, because they know they've got the support of their family, they will do much better in a rehab program.
Let's go for an ad break. We're going to talk lots more about this dark and murky world of drug addiction. My guest is Jenny Wanting. She is a psychologist. She founded the DARE Centre. It is based in Rosebank, Johannesburg. And if you have a loved one who is addicted, please don't lose hope. I think as long as you can hope and you can be supportive, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Jenny Wanting is a psychologist. We're talking children binging on over-the-counter drugs. That's the new trend all around us. And of course, she's also talking about keeping the faith, going for counseling yourself as a support structure, and hopefully you will be able to help your loved one get over their addiction. How many hopeful stories have crossed your path? How many have you been involved in? You often hear the terminology, once an addict, always an addict, and that is so damning that I think it gives family members, it just gives them the sense of hopelessness.
I think that recovery from addiction is definitely possible. Over the years, I have been amazed, I've been in awe of the courage and determination that people show in their recovery. That saying, once an addict, always an addict, I want to turn it around. I think that recovery from addiction is certainly possible, but we never talk about recovered drug addicts. We talk about recovering addicts, because recovery is a lifelong process. In addiction changes the way your brain works. And recovery means you have to undo those neural pathways. You have to teach your brain a different way.
Because you often hear people saying that he or she's been an addict for the past 10 years. And I wonder then, how long is it going to take to change and get the brain healthy all over again?
It's a lifetime's work. Recovering addicts have to work every single day for the rest of their lives on their recovery. Because if they forget, if they start to slide back into old patterns of behavior, then relapse is inevitable. So that is why the statistics on recovery are so poor, because it's very hard work. It's possible, but it's very, very difficult. And that is why the support of the family, of friends, is so important. That's why early intervention is so important. That's why I am so passionate about the work we do in schools. Getting the kids off drugs before they are in this lifetime of substance abuse, and they really do then do serious damage to their brain.
You've been very involved for a very long time in this type of work. Do you ever become discouraged? When you see people relapsing and you put in so much of effort in trying to help them heal and to heal their loved ones as well, because they are scarred too. The addict's family have gone through this journey with him or her, and they too have been scarred. How do you deal with that, and how do you support the person all over again? Do you ever give up on anybody?
So I think, exactly what you were saying, that, when you've worked with someone for a long time and they relapse, it is disappointing. And you do get angry and you do get frustrated with them. And that is exactly what their friends and their family have experienced. So it helps you understand what the people around them are going through. But what I always remind myself is, as difficult as it is for us at the rehab center and as difficult as it is for the family, it is nothing compared to what the addict is going through. If we are angry and disappointed, you must know how angry and disappointed they are with themselves. Because nobody wants to hurt the people around them. Nobody wants to lie and manipulate and steal and wreck their lives. And so I remind myself of that. Don't give up on them, because they're not doing this on purpose. They are in the grip of that addiction, and they are not going to be able to get out of it themselves. We have to stand by them.
Do you agree it's a disease like any other disease?
I think it's a more complicated disease than some diseases. But because more and more we understand now how it changes the brain, and sometimes those changes in the brain are permanent, yes, there is definitely a biological as well as psychological aspect to
I've heard
to
this
addiction.
time and time again, people suggesting that if you are an addict and have been for a while, the structure of your brain does change, the wiring in your brain. How does it impact on your personality?
Negatively.
And you do say, you do impart this knowledge to
Yes.
the children when you go and give talks at schools.
Yes, so when we go into schools and even in counselling sessions, we're educating people about addiction. We'll talk about the reward pathway in the brain, which is part of the limbic system. And it's the part of the brain that is responsible for reward and motivation.
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Your brain releases dopamine. That's
Right.
you get rewarded for doing certain behaviors by the release of dopamine. And drugs can hijack that reward pathway. Drugs can cause your brain to release way more dopamine than it normally would, so you get an intense euphoric feeling. Regular everyday activities don't give you such an intense feeling. So you don't want to do those things anymore. You want to take the drug because you want the strong, the powerful feeling. When people stop taking drugs, their brain is not sensitive to normal amounts of dopamine. So it can take years for their brain to actually learn to survive or be sensitive to just regular amounts of dopamine. That's why recovery is such a challenge.
So that's why it just sounds so horribly damaging when you think about it. And I'm just beginning to wonder about the relationships of that person, because I should imagine they're short-fused all the time.
So they're unpredictable. People who abuse drugs are unpredictable. You never know whether they are sober or whether they're under the influence. When they are coming off the drug, they can be depressed, they can be anxious, they can be psychotic. And so, yes, it damages the relationships around them because their friends, their family can't trust them. Their employers, their teachers, they never know what they're going to get from this person.
And people who obviously abuse drugs also have horrible sleeping disorders, do they not?
So sometimes they don't sleep at all, depending on the types of drugs they're taking.
Right.
So if they're taking a central nervous system depressant, something that will make them sleepy, make them sort of sedate them, then you get central nervous system stimulants where they don't sleep at all. And then you get people who use uppers and downers. They use both. So they take something that keeps them awake and then they need to come down. So they take something that sedates them and then they're so sedated, they need something to wake them up again. So they self-medicate.
How damaging is that?
Well, again, the risk of overdose is huge because you're taking different drugs that give your body completely conflicting messages. Risk of overdose is huge to your heart, to your brain, to all your organs, your liver, your kidneys. Every single organ in your body is affected.
You've been in this type of work for a long, long time. You could have chosen any other path of psychology. You are an educational psychologist. Why does this mean so much to you, and why is it that you're running the center for so very many years?
You know, working in the school environment, starting off as an educator and an educational psychologist, just, you know, education is important to me. And seeing something, substance abuse, preventing children from learning, preventing them from being able to achieve and move forward in their lives, that really, really disturbed me. And so, you know, the preventative work is really my passion. The counselling is an added bonus, but the preventative work, being able to really impart knowledge and talk to kids on their level and help them understand that they're not alone, that we all experience peer pressure. We all want to, be part of a group and want our friends to accept us and be part of the cool, popular group, but you don't have to take drugs to be part of that group. You don't have to smoke, you don't have to drink, you don't have to get involved in dangerous things in order to be loved and accepted and part of a group. That's really where my passion is.
This whole issue around over-the-counter medication mixed with cold drinks,
Yes.
Trying to chase the lean effect. Why is it called the lean effect? Why has it got that label on it?
So lean is just kind of a slang name that appeared in the South African scene. This concoction is something that is used all over the world, and it's got different names. So in the United States, for example, they call it robo-tripping.
Okay.
In South Africa, we call it lean. And I think because of some of the different types of cough mixtures that have been used, but, it's not just cough mixtures that are abused. Other over-the-counter and prescription medications are also abused. And I think for parents, what is very, very important is to educate their children, to be part of this process of educating children about responsible medicine use, about responsible substance use. We do live in a world today where we over-medicate. From a young age, children are being given medications, serious medications, that they don't always need. I sometimes step on a few toes when I talk to parents, because I'll say to them, don't give your children codeine. A child who takes codeine cannot function in a classroom.
Oh. Okay, we're going to wrap up now.
Okay.
Final words from you. Are there specific signs and symptoms for parents to look out for regarding over-the-counter meds, cough mixtures mixed with cold drinks?
Okay, so these kinds of drugs are sedatives, they're central nervous system depressants. So you'd be looking for sleepiness, lack of coordination, lack of concentration, lack of focus, sleeping more than they normally would. We know teenagers especially sleep a lot because they're growing, but sleeping too much, difficulty waking them up, almost like a drunk appearance, like they have, you'll see that they have taken something. If they are addicted and they've been using it for a while, withdrawal symptoms, nausea, vomiting, very serious muscle cramps, delusions, paranoia, those things also start to appear.
And that's where we have to leave it. Your
Okay.
final message to our viewers this morning.
If you see a problem, don't ignore it. There's lots of help available. Even if it is phoning your local rehab center, they will provide you with information. Talk about it. Talk about it to your kids. Talk about it to people who can assist you.
Just remind us once again, for caregivers, for parents, for support, for the support group, what should they be doing so that they become strong enough to be able to help the addict?
If you are living with an addict or you are struggling with someone who has a problem with substance abuse, get help for yourself in terms of information and developing skills to be able to confront that addict in order to get them into some kind of counselling.
Thank you indeed for your wise words.
Thank you.
That was Jenny Wanting. She is a psychologist talking about this new trend, rave, this new darkness that's descending upon our youngsters, and that is over-the-counter medications mixed with cold drinks, and as you've heard, it can be very, very deadly. And still to come on the show, we're going to be talking about an educational trust, so don't go away. And finally, we have Lee Bristow in studio talking about something that's very close to heart. She's absolutely passionate about this, and it's the Sumbandila Scholarship Trust. It's a Venda word. She's going to tell us what it means and why she's so passionate about this work. Morning, welcome to the program.
Morning, Julie.
So you are the executive director of this scholarship trust. What does it mean? I know you indicated to me it's a Venda word. What does that mean?
It literally means point the road or show the way. So the whole concept is that the children who are beneficiaries of the Sumbandila Scholarship Trust will one day to go on to help and support and be role models for other children like themselves.
Okay, how long ago did you start this and how did it come about? First, even before you respond to that, who is Lee Bristow?
So I'm an educator, a maths and biology teacher, and when I came to live in what was then Louis Tricard in the early 90s, myself and other members of the community started a school called Ridgeway, which is still in existence. And then in 2007, we realized that we were not reaching some of the deep rural talent, children who were enormously talented but couldn't afford to go to schools like Ridgeway where they could access computers, good science laboratories, outstanding teaching and a world-class education. And so we started the Sumbandila Scholarship Trust, where we select kids from very poor homes in deep rural areas in Vembe, and we put them through high school, and then, or we put them into a support program alongside their rural high schools, and then we go on to help them access funding and universities, and then also support them into the workplace where necessary.
So when you talk about these children, how do you kind of access these children in the deep rural areas, as you say? And how would you know that this particular child or this particular group of children have the potential? Because I should imagine you're spending a lot of resources in this person or in this group of people, and you must be comfortable in the knowledge that it's the right group of people you've chosen, because you don't want anyone to drop off on the wayside.
Absolutely, and obviously that's a really important part of what we do. So the selection takes place. We have different centres in the rural areas so the children can actually walk there, because the requirement is that the household income must be less than 4,000 Rand a month, the total household income. We make exceptions on occasion, and then we go through the schools. So the application forms go to the schools, and the schools know the category of child we're looking for, and then there's a very extensive form they fill in. Then we do a maths and English sifting test, and we select out the top students based also obviously looking at the means test, and then we invite those children for interviews. We say once we've seen a face, then the child won't go home with nothing. So they either become part of the full scholarship program or they go onto our Saturday and holiday school program, and all of whom go on into the university program.
Mm-hmm. You probably would get children who so desperately want the opportunity to get into a good school, but they just don't have what it takes. You have a list, you have a criteria, and they don't make that list. What do you do for a child like that, or for a parent of a child like that? Because they want a good education for their child, because that means that child's going to take them out of the cycle of poverty.
Absolutely. The thing is, you know, as you can imagine, this kind of program is expensive. It's resource intensive.
Absolutely.
I raise most of the money I raise abroad. So we have a philosophy, we'd rather help fewer children all the way than many children just some of the way. So we want to take them all the way until they're actually in the workplace. Some don't need us once they're at university, but many of them still do. So as I said before, we don't invite, once we've seen a child, once they've been to Ridgeway for an interview, then they're either on the Saturday holiday school program, which means they stay in their rural high schools, but they travel on Saturdays and school holidays. And there we give them access to the resources, albeit, you know, in a lesser way, but we also give them a lot of academic support. And we have a holiday school program where we have teachers who come out from top schools in America.
Wow.
And offer programs in things like robotics, programming, dance, yoga, fine art, photography. So we try and build around the extracurricular as well. So the Saturday and holiday school program is just as successful as the children who are able to access these full scholarships at Ridgeway.
In many instances, these kids that come out of very poor homes probably help in some way in supporting that home, whether it's just fetching and carrying the water or going out and foraging for food, etc. And that one less resource in that household could set them back quite a bit. Do the families expect some form of stipend or some monetary value just to keep them going because that child has been taken out of the equation?
Well, we have a very strong philosophy that we have to keep the child grounded in the community. So the full scholarship children who come to Ridgeway, although they're boarders, which is essential for them just to have access to the internet, electricity, etc., they go home almost every weekend. So unless there's some very pressing school activity, we insist and we pay for them to go home on the weekends. But no, the family are incredibly supportive because they see the value. They know that long term, the child's going to put back into the family, into the extended family, into the community. And we already see that happening with our children who are in the workplace.
Now, you undoubtedly work really hard in getting money together for these scholarships to be ongoing. You also mentioned that you get teachers all the way from the States to come in and spend time with these children. Why do you have to go so far afield? Do we not have the resources in South Africa? And if you made a heartfelt enough plea, you would get teachers, local teachers, to give of their time?
You know, it's not to say that we haven't got South African teachers, because on the Saturday schools, we do have South African teachers who give their time. But remember, for a teacher in their school holidays, it's a vital time to recuperate and have a rest. These Americans are volunteering their time because it's an incredible experience for them.
Oh.
And they love it. And to be honest, we don't have to pay them.
Right.
And they come out, they have this amazing experience, and they can offer things that our children and some of our teachers here have not experienced themselves. For example, one of the schools that supports us is Riverdale Country School in New York and Lakeside in Seattle, which is Bill Gates' old school.
Wow.
So they have skill sets that we can't yet access necessarily in our teachers in Limpopo. So, it's not to say that we don't have the skills here, because we really do.
And undoubtedly, it's going to look great on their CVs when they get back home.
Yeah.
How is it, Lee, that you manage to tap into these amazing resources overseas? You've created these partnerships, and obviously they're going to be very, very long-standing. Must have been lots of hard work and very good contacts. Tell us about it.
It is a lot of hard work. Most of our funding comes from abroad. We have had South African funding, but South African funding is very sought after, as everybody knows. We have a lot of funding from the UK, the Netherlands, and the USA. It's come through endless networking over a period of 20 years. And I think once people come and see what we're doing in Limpopo, they fall in love with it. They fall in love with the students, because these students are success stories. These are not victim stories. These are children who have amazing abilities, and we're just giving them a leg up. We're not saying we've taken them out of something. We're saying we're helping them on their way. We're part of showing the way, Sumbandila, because I think they would have succeeded anyway, but we're helping.
What about paying it forward on the part of the students, whether you've taken them through university and they've now made a success of their lives, or whether they've just completed high school but they are in meaningful employ? Do you expect them to pay it forward?
So I think initially that was the idea, but what I have realized along the way is these children, and all of our students go to tertiary, these children have extended families and communities that they're expected to give back to.
Of course.
So to expect them to give directly back to the program is unrealistic. Maybe they will in time, but at the moment, most of them are paying for their siblings,
of course,
their extended families, etc. But what they do is they give their time. So they come back and they tutor at holiday school. We have a mentorship program where they help other students. So there's a huge giving back program around that, which is just as valuable. In fact, more
so
valuable. Yeah.
All right. And you are based and you service only the Limpopo area.
Yes.
Any particular reason for that?
Well, because I was situated there, and that's where the school is. And I think what's critical to our program is the partnership with Ridgeway. It's a small school, so it's like a family environment, got very supportive teachers. It's a very good school. So the program is, and they give us the premises over the weekends and the holidays. They don't charge us. So it's it's a symbiotic relationship. So, and it's where I'm located. So it may extend in the future, given that we have more funding, but and also, to be honest, there's tremendous need in Limpopo.
Okay.
Tremendous need.
All right, let's go for an ad break. We'll be back to talk some more.
Okay.
And that, of course, is Lee Bristow talking about her life's passion, and that is to touch lives in the rural areas in Limpopo, to give kids a hand up in achieving their dreams and their goals. Don't go away. We're going to be talking some more in a little while. Lee Bristow is in studio talking about the amazing Sumbandile Scholarship Trust. She founded this way back about 20 years ago, and it is still going strong. Lee, why did you start this? Why was, I mean, you could have done anything else in your life. 20 years on, and I have no doubt in my mind that the early days must have been real hard work. You probably were walking around with a begging bowl. Tell us about just how lean those days were, and why do you do this?
I think that the most important way, well, Mandela said it, the most powerful tool that can change the world is education. And I think that education is critical. And so that's my way of making a contribution. But the real story was a young girl called Griselda Sibone, who was the daughter of one of the men who worked for my husband on the farm. And she was extraordinary. And I just realized she had no access to computers, mathematical instruments, and she'd passed matric, wanted to go to university, but the skill set was not there. And I became involved with her education, and that motivated me to start Sumbandile. Yeah.
And the type of support, I have no doubt that your immediate family were there for you right from the beginning, and probably are still there for you. But those early days going around knocking on doors, how difficult was that for you?
Well, I was incredibly lucky because there's a company in London called Marwin Investment London, and a very good friend of mine there gave me the first funding to start.
Wow.
And that also gave me a network, which was very helpful. And then the DG Murray Trust in South Africa, they helped me in the early days. So the early days were difficult. The local community helped tremendously with Ridgeway, and getting Ridgeway off the ground. But fundraising is grueling, it's
Absolutely.
a never-ending story, It would be wonderful if someone just said, okay, this is a fantastic program, it's succeeding, let me give you all the funding you need and you just focus on the children. But actually a lot of my time goes on fundraising.
And let's look at the numbers. As we speak now, you're 20 years in operation.
No, Ridgeway is 20 years.
Right. And
Sumbandile is nearly 12 years
12
now.
years,
Yes.
but long enough.
Yes,
Long enough.
yes.
So what sort of results are we seeing? How many children have passed through this system? Where are they at now as we speak, and the future?
So bearing in mind that our first matriculants would have been in 2012, because we take them on an 8-year journey, depending on them. So we have doctors, accountants. Our first doctors just graduated now.
Wonderful.
Accountants, engineers. There's a strong bias in the sciences, because obviously they're selected in that way, a strong bias. But we also have teachers. We're enormously proud of our teachers, nurses. We have 1 or 2 lawyers. So we have approximately 45 students now who graduated and are out of university. We have over 120 students still in universities, in the top universities in South Africa. And then we have 150 kids still in high school, both on full scholarships and on our Saturday and holiday school program. So as I said, it's a highly selective, concentrated program. We need to walk the whole road with these students.
And obviously a very costly venture, but
Very.
something that's going to pay back for those people that have undertaken the journey, but lots of hard work on your part.
Yeah. Julie, we're hoping, our firm belief is that our kids will be leaders in their own fields. So the doctors will get into the Department of Health, the teachers will get into the Department of Education, we'll have students going into politics. Our financiers, we've got a lot of them in the financial world, will make real impact. And, that's our belief, that this will make a real impact in a leadership capacity.
Are you planning on replicating this program in other parts of South Africa, or do you have enough on your plate as it is, as far as finding donors and funding, etc., is concerned? Because it's a huge undertaking.
It is a huge undertaking.
We're talking millions upon millions of rands.
Yeah, millions of rands, but it's more than that. It's the contact we have with the children. It's the wraparound support. It's not enough to throw money at a situation. It takes a personal relationship, both from the teachers, the Sumbandila staff, the hostel staff. So I think it could be replicated, but it would take another school to come forward and use the model and raise their own funds. It would be difficult for us to do that.
Have people approached you to help start up something like this elsewhere?
You know, there's a tremendous, it's a pity, but there's a tremendous focus amongst funders on numbers, on quantity.
Right.
And as opposed to what I say, rather have fewer and make sure that you take these kids the whole way. So I see programs where there's thousands of children and funders want that, they want numbers. And that's not our philosophy. So it isn't easily replicable. You would need somebody with the same vision.
Mm-hmm. What happens if Lee now decides she wants to take a break and possibly concentrate in other areas of her life? Who is there to step into your shoes?
Well, obviously that's a constant thing in any non-profit, because if you don't have a succession plan, you know,
you're not going to get the
they don't
funding.
last. Mm-hmm. So that I have a plan, if I can put it
plan.
that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, personally, and for the Sumbandila Scholarship Trust?
Well, I sincerely hope that one of my ex-students will eventually take over from me. I don't see myself doing it for more than another 5 years. It is tiring, and it's a very emotionally draining work.
I should imagine.
Yeah, you become very attached to these students, and it's hard not to. So I would like to see one of them, because they're best equipped. Mm-hmm. They're best equipped to show the way.
Mm-hmm. And you have to, at some point in time, cut the emotional cords to these.
Absolutely.
They become like your own children.
They do indeed. Indeed.
Your own family and the other support structure around you.
So I have a very supportive husband, very long-suffering husband, who has supported me in this mission and been amazing. I have my eldest daughter's gone into teaching. My middle daughter's always been involved in social development and is very involved in Sumbandila. And then I have a son who's just a sportsman at this stage, at school still.
People watching us this morning and would like to possibly start up an NPO like yours. I know you're going to say it's a very long, arduous journey. You have to have thick skin to be able to take all the rejection and all the no's. But what would be the best place to start?
I think the best place, you know, very often non-profits surround an individual with an individual's vision. You need to get people on the board who have business skills, who have networks. You need to have a very supportive board. That's critical. And I think what helped with the success of Sumbandila is that we centered around Ridgeway College. So we built it around, we had all the peripheral support, the teachers, the heads, the hostel support, and you need that. And so anything like this, it's better to start it within a school environment. And there are many. This country is incredible with what they're doing in the educational non-profit sphere.
I know that you're doing an amazing job, as you know, is your support structure. But you mentioned Mandela just now, and I'm wondering, on Mandela's birthday, apart from the amazing work that you do, what is the extra bit that you do?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, Julie. Sorry.
We're meant to be donating X amount of
I
time
see.
on Mandela's birthday.
Oh, okay.
You are doing
Yes.
an amazing job as it is, but
Yes.
what's that little extra that you do?
Okay, so I have an incredibly supportive staff. They're wonderful. They work such long hours. We normally try and do something with our students. So we'll go out into the rural areas and paint a primary school, or go and play. Rather than paint, go and play with young children. Or there's a wonderful school started by the Karela nuns nearby. We go sometimes for children with special needs. We sometimes just go and play with those students. So we try to do something extra with our kids, giving back.
Wonderful challenges that, 12 years on, and there must be many, and how
Many,
did you
many,
overcome
many.
them?
I think our hardest challenges, one of our students passed away, and another one committed suicide.
Oh, no.
Don't know if you know, that's a really big problem in this country now, in that young 28 suicide.
Yes, we've talked about it on the show.
And that, it's like, you know, it's your child. It's very hard to cope with. Some of the children, we have very few children who don't make the entire journey, but some of the children do drop out, very few, and that's always very hard, and one tries to get them back into the system.
Do you go back to try and find out why they're dropping out, and then offer the support, whether it's emotional, family support, whatever it is? Do you try and intervene in that way?
We try everything. We try everything. Interesting, you had a talk earlier about drugs.
Yes.
It's very often centered around that.
Okay.
It's minuscule, but it does happen. Pregnancies, we've had only 2, but we always get our girls back into the system. And because that's a big problem, teenage pregnancy. Those are our main challenges. Young people.
Challenges as you'd see play out in any community, around,
in any family.
Absolutely,
and
around
we have
the country.
We have to support our kids through it.
As painful as this might be, you spoke about losing a student through suicide and dropouts. Did you ever get to the bottom of why that suicide happened?
As much as one ever can. I think that's the tragedy of suicide, is that there's so much doubt, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much blame, there's so much
You'd never know the
regret,
true story.
And it's a terrible thing. And I think the only thing I can say that we've taken positively from it is that this must never happen again.
True.
So we have to be more vigilant around our university students, because at that age children want to pull away, but actually they still need you. And as much as they have their families don't always know how to navigate those domains because they haven't themselves been at university. So it's a very difficult age, the university age.
So you kind of really hands off. By the time they go to university, you're not in the immediate vicinity. What sort of structures are in place to support them psychologically and otherwise?
No, we do support them. I see a lot of my university students. We have a house where a lot of our university students stay, which forms a hub where the others can come. We have functions there. We try to create mentors. We have 2 people who work in our university department in our office, who try to call them regularly. But as I said, at that age, many of them are saying, okay, we're independent, we're on our own now.
Yeah.
And they only come running back when they're in trouble. So it's very hard, to try and keep in touch with them.
True. Time for us to wrap up.
Yes,
Your final
thank
words.
you, Julie. Well, I think my final words will be that, it's a huge ocean of need. We're a drop in that ocean. But I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to meet some extraordinary children and see some extraordinary successes.
And no doubt you've touched many lives in an amazingly positive way. Please, God, continue doing that, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Julie.
That was the lovely Lee Bristow talking about her life's work, her life's passion, and that is the Sumbandila Scholarship Trust. May they grow from strength to strength. Time for us to wrap up. Thank you indeed for your company. Till Wednesday at the same time, take care on the roads. And as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khudafiz from me, Julie Alli.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا 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 هلا